I first became involved in looking at person-centered planning in the mid-'80s when we were trying to help people leave institutions. And we were looking at doing person-centered plans so that each person moved from the institution into a life that they desired. What we discovered when we were doing that is we were doing a form of planning where we asked people, what is your dream? And we were doing planning with people who had not had enough positive life experiences to have a dream. They basically were saying whatever they thought we wanted to hear so that they could get out. Their goal was to move. Their goal was to leave. And so we really struggled with how do we discover what matters to this person so that we can still construct a life that they can have, that they would see as a good life. And then after having a life where they had positive experiences, things to try that they enjoyed, then we felt after a few years they would probably be able to tell us what a dream would be like. And from that came essential lifestyle planning. After doing that for a decade, what we discovered was we were getting really good at teaching people how to write good plans. But those good plans were not necessarily translating into good lives. That what we had done is figured out how to create good paper, much more than good lives. And what we began to see was more and more people were doing small pilots, small efforts that created really amazing lives, people who were really deeply connected, people who had the lives that we were describing. And this exceptional practice was remaining small islands. And typical practice was changing at a glacial pace, just not at the same pace that we thought, people deserve. That everyone who's receiving services should have as a goal the same kind of life that people who are receiving exceptional services. And how do we move in that direction? And that's where teaching person-centered thinking came from. Because what we felt we were doing is we were teaching a small group of people how to write plans, and we needed to teach a large group of people how to implement plans. As we moved down the road with that, we also discovered that what we needed to do was not just teach the people who were in support roles, we also had to teach the people who were in leadership roles. We also had to teach the very people who were receiving the services how they could better articulate and advocate for their own lives. And how could we support and teach family members to create the descriptions for the people that they loved who were less articulate. I think what we're looking at is a set of positive biases that those of us who do this work have. And we have a kind of a working definition of good life in our heads. And it is a life where people are directing it themselves, but it's also a life that's in the community. It's a life that is one where people are supported in a web of reciprocal relationships. It's a life where people have opportunities to work. It's a life where people have opportunities to contribute. The danger is that everyone is person-centered. Just ask anyone. You won't find anyone who says, I wish we were. Everyone says we are. And so in some ways, the term has lost meaning. It's lost impact. When we say people are person-centered, what we're really saying is the person is at the center. It's not system-centered. It's not program-centered. That the person is at the center, and that what we're doing revolves around that. What the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services has said, if you really distill their new rule, is that people should be able to have decisions that they are making for themselves in 5 areas. The first is that I get to pick who supports me. I'm not assigned. I'm not bid out. I'm not going into a slot. I am saying I would prefer to be supported by this agency, and that's the agency that will then provide the support. I should then get to pick where I live. And I should be able to choose who I live with. And then the last two, I should be able to determine what I do with my time. I should be able to say, here's how I'd like to spend my time. With the federal caveat that everyone should have an opportunity for employment. Doesn't mean I can't say no to a job, but I have to have the opportunity to have a job. And then the last is I get to determine how I spend my resources. Well, if I'm able to act in all 5 of those areas, then I am determining my own life, and that would make it person-centered. If you compare those 5 areas with typical practice, then you would say most people who get services don't pick who supports them. If they do, are they making an informed choice? Do they pick where they live? Do they pick who they live with? Do they choose how they spend their time? Are all of the answers to those questions yes? And quite frequently the answer is no. Or if it's yes, it's a qualified yes. You can live here or be homeless is not a real choice. I've always been optimistic. I've always felt that this is achievable. I've always felt, though, that it's an immense task. And it's still an immense task. And the pressure for compliance is the pressure for perversion. Because what you're looking at is everyone is saying that I must be in compliance with the federal regulations. So while the federal regulations create positive pressure for change, they also create pressure for compliance that is on the surface, so that you can say superficially yes to those 5 questions, but not necessarily yes in the spirit, just yes in the letter. For people who are the emerging leaders, what you need to look at is that this requires commitment, it requires passion, it requires persistence, but it also requires skill. That if you're going to be a leader who is going to be in charge of things, that you also want to become a good manager. You also want the skills that go with good management. You need to be able to know something about change management. You need to know that if you're not getting any resistance, you're not making real change. That real change evokes resistance, and there are techniques, there are ways to help people get past their resistance, to be able to go through a change process. And if you're going to be an effective leader, you need to be able to see that it's not just passion and commitment. It's also a skill set that helps create successful change.